I was so happy to upgrade to chicken. I started selling pieces for a few $100, Like when you met me, I was
That's
selling
when you
stuff.
know you've made it.
Yeah, like chicken. Woo!
Hello, and welcome to Inspired By, a creative podcast about creative people. I am your host, Marissa Davis, and I am joined by co-host Jennifer Nilsson.
Hello.
Hello. Each episode, we will have casual conversations with creatives to learn more about the stories behind the creatives, what drives them, what moves them, what inspires them to do what they do in their creative lives every day. This week, we will be inspired by Miles Davis. He is an award-winning artist, author, illustrator, muralist, overall general creative person, very imaginative soul. And I am very excited to share his story with you all and with our listeners.
Yeah, I can't wait. But before we get to him, we're going to start with our creative brief. So every episode, we'll be joined by a couple of members of our team here at Clementine Creative who are going to bring a surprise topic of creative conversation to the table for us to talk about. So today we're joined by Sharon Collickle and Caroline Johns. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
What have you got for us?
So today we have drum roll.
Drum roll, please.
Drum roll. Okay, so Poppy is a soda brand, for those that don't know. And in the past big game, beginning of February, they took a initiative, kind of an influencer campaign to send a select number of influencers a vending machine full of Poppy.
Oh boy, that sounds heavy.
Yeah. Surprise? Like they didn't know it was coming.
Yes.
At their front door?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm like, where do you put this thing in a?
That's a statement.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's not a commercial. Everyone doesn't have a commercial space for this.
exactly.
How much electricity does it take?
Right?
Right.
So it, as I'm sure you can imagine, has sparked a lot of backlash in the whole industry of, consumers and influencers. Everyone is just kind of like, contemplating the why behind
Why?
it.
Yeah.
My why is like, or like, my question is, how in the world do you, like, are they just going to come and restock this for everyone? Like, what? I know the whole point is like that big wow factor, and no one has done that before in the soda industry, and, send an influencer a vending machine. But yeah, so Olipop is a competitor of Poppy, and they joined the convo and kind of threw some fire on
Shade?
the heat. Yeah. And so they, were kind of stating the value of a vending machine, and kind of, I think that's where consumers are like, oh wow, like they get all this free stuff. And I think, it's in the PR world and an influencer box and campaign thing, it's like what is the line of like too far
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
a price that's like too high to send someone.
Well, and it all starts feeling kind of inauthentic
Yeah.
Exactly.
at the end of the day, right? Like, okay, you got this vending machine at your house, which I don't know that anybody asked for. But are you now supposed to throw a party for the Super Bowl in order to have all of these people over to drink all of this? Yeah, like what is the motivation behind it?
Yeah.
And how do you, as an influencer, take that and spread whatever message it is that they're trying to spread in a way that feels genuine to who you are as an influencer and as a brand?
I mean, I think it's really interesting in general, just with influencers, that I feel like the influencer culture is something that started out as this very big over the top kind of thing. But now has started to come down in scale a lot, where there's this sort of sensitivity to like being relatable and being somewhat authentic and, being transparent about what your relationship with brands might be when something like that, when you're putting out content like that. So it's an interesting question, but clearly they got a lot of people talking with it. If you are an ends justify the means kind of person, then I mean, they clearly got some publicity out of the effort.
Definitely. So I think it's kind of interesting also because since we were talking about how Poppy is a gut healthy kind of soda, like prebiotic. I think that's kind of more in that crunchy, natural line of things. So the vending machine kind of is a juxtaposition to what their brand is trying to deliver to the consumer itself. So I'm not sure where the thought process,
If it feels exactly right.
if that was the right message.
I see your point, but I also think, one of the things that Poppy does is they are very bold in their branding, in their color palette, in everything that they do. So to me, that part of it aligns pretty well.
That's true.
So, if you thought that they should be more subtle, then wouldn't you think more of everything else that they do should be more subtle? And maybe they hit what they were trying to hit.
Right.
And any publicity is good publicity.
They made a big splash from that perspective. I'd be interested to know what any of these influencers did.
Yeah, their
Like,
reaction.
did they do anything with it? Did they put out content? Or was it just like, hey, I have this vending machine and I don't know why. What do I do now? Who takes it away?
Yeah, that's my question is like, where does it go? Like, do they come pick it back
I
up
think
or?
they did come pick it back up is what I had read. But again, what are we supposed to do with it in the meantime? Like, you could have sent a cooler, you could have sent other items, but it's a whole vending machine, But.
Well, maybe they can think of some very creative ways to use the vending machine moving forward. If anybody wants any ideas, I have some.
Open. Very interesting. Well, that's really interesting. Thank you so much for bringing that to the table today. And it looks like our guest has arrived now.
Yay.
Give us just a minute to get set up and get him mic'd up, and we will be right back.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Thanks.
So, welcome back. I am really excited to introduce our first guest to Inspired By. This episode, we are inspired by the one, the only, but not the only, Miles Davis.
Well, thank you for having me.
Miles is an award-winning artist, illustrator, and author, and muralist, and just so happens to also be my husband.
Just so happens. Something's wrong with her, folks.
He and I actually run Massive Burn Studios, and that has become kind of the focal piece and business that we use to showcase your artwork and show the world kind of what your creativity does and how you are inspired by everything around you. So we want to hear a little bit more about that. I know our listeners are going to be excited to hear your story. So why don't you give everybody, start off with a little background about who you are and how you got started?
Sure. Well, I was raised in the military in a bitterly divorced family, so I traveled a lot as a child. I had one brother that used to travel with me back on Northwest Airlines. Do you guys remember that airline? It's now defunct for all you millennials. But anyway, so I was on that airline flying by myself, sometimes as far away as Hawaii to Alabama. So it's pretty much across the globe. And so my brother and I just kept each other company growing up from the time we were about 5 years old. And artwork and drawing and sketching was always just part of my activities when I was traveling so much. It kind of kept me company. Mostly because my brother was so good at Game Boy, he would run all the batteries down. So I never got to play.
You never got a shot at the Game Boy.
Never got a shot at the Game Boy. Yeah, he was so good at video games. So blessing in disguise, I used to just draw Mario Brothers, but he played Mario Brothers. And so anyway, long story short, I just got better and better over time, as you do when you repeatedly do things, learning bad habits and good habits. And then moving around the military a lot, I got exposed to a lot of different kind of cultures within our own country, as well as some over in Europe, which was really neat for me. And so since I was a child, I've been involved with comic books and, Calvin and Hobbes, one of my favorite comic strips that inspired me. And I started when I was about 5 years old. I just never stopped. It's always been a part of my life. As you know very well, my lovely wife. If I don't paint for 2 or 3 weeks, I tend to go a little bit nuts. Like it's become such an existential part of me that if I don't do it, I actually literally start losing my mind a little bit. So, it's just a part of who I am. So I'm very blessed to have that as a part of my life to help me work out my issues in life and to kind of just help me in my travels.
So do you think would you say that creativity has become part of who you are through nature or through nurture?
Mostly nature. For me personally, I'm sure that's different for different artists. For me personally, it was mostly nature. I've always been interested. I've always been wanting to have something in my hands. My mom has photos of me at our kitchen room table with just sketch paper just thrown everywhere. And if I do one line wrong, I was like, ah, I'd ball it up and throw it across the room at like 4 or 5 years old.
That's interesting because that's kind of what I was going to ask is like, did you just gravitate towards that or did somebody put that in front of you? Like your brother has the Game Boy, so here, do this instead.
No, it was kind of natural. Like when we traveled by ourselves, we had little book bags as big as our torsos, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so we had coloring books and sketch paper and that kind of stuff like in our book bags. And so, yeah, I mean, there's just kind of natural. Like, we didn't have any supervision. We had chaperones, but that usually meant shoving us at a gate and leaving us. Or like, this is back in the 80s. You know,
When it was safe to leave a child at a gate.
They would never do this to kids now.
You would have a kid at an airport without a chaperone.
So, but actually, my brother and I, we had plans. We had plans in the airports. Like, when we got layovers and stuff, we were all probably 7 and 5 years old. We had plans. Like, so he tried to take us. I'll attack his head, you attack his legs. We had game plans. We had game plans.
You're prepared for anything.
Exactly. But
that's how we learn independence.
Right? So, but to answer your question bluntly, no, nobody ever shoved it in my face. I did take some art lessons. My mom did give me some art lessons growing up a little bit. Like I said before, my parents were divorced, so I saw her during the summers mostly. And she would usually line up, when I was in first and second grade, she'd line up art lessons. But that was more technical stuff. Like I would do still lifes with pastels and apples and things like that. They didn't really nurture my cartooning or my creativity as far as creating. It was just more the technical skills.
Not really what ultimately ended up to be your style.
Not at all. Nowhere close. Nowhere close.
What about tell me about that when you were 1-year-old story.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, my parents were in the military. And before my parents got divorced, I was 1 year old. I was born preemie. I was born about a month and a half preemie. So I have scars on my chest where I call myself Weapon X.
Yeah, it's your superhero.
Right, yeah. It's like I got stabbed with tubes and so they had to pump me like a balloon. And in doing that, my parents were very sensitive to kind of making sure I was watched at all times for like the first year or so. And at my first year birthday, it was a big deal. So they hired a Korean babysitter who had married a military man who had moved out to New Mexico. I think that's where we were living at the time. It was New Mexico. I don't recall. But anyway, there's pictures of this as well. And there's a little Asian lady just came over. And apparently it's part of their culture. And I forgot the particular name of the ceremony. But what they do is they set stuff around you in a circle. And then they say a prayer or a chant or whatever it is. And they put you in the middle. And wherever the baby crawls to, that's kind of what you become as far as your path in life, so to speak. Really wish I picked up the dollar bill. Would have been nice. But I ended up with the paintbrush, and there's a little picture of me in my Oshkosh Bagosh overalls, like holding up a paintbrush on the coffee table. So that being the case, it's kind of weird.
It was destiny.
I wasn't even aware of that ceremony, honestly, until I saw that picture like years and years later. I was probably a teenager, and that's when my mom told me the story. And then I asked my dad about it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that." That makes sense, but yeah,
meant to be.
Yeah, there you go.
Nature, nurture, push that way. I don't know.
Combination of all.
Combination of it. Yeah.
What about now? Talk about kind of your creative process, and do you have any routines or rituals that you go through to get yourself energized or in the zone?
In the flow.
In the flow.
In the flow state.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the flow state's overrated. I love the flow state. I love if I can get myself there. But through my travel, when I was younger, I was very idealistic about what creativity was and what you could accomplish with it. And it is kind of like running the lottery. It's like trying to be a rock star. If you're trying to be a big time fine artist or whatever, it's a very difficult slog. So what I've learned over time is that the flow state's great, but just get down and do the work. Like focus on the work, and the work will come from work has been one of my adages as I've grown as an artist. And yeah, that kind of answers your question for the most part, right? I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Just learn and grow. But run one more time with you, right?
Your creative routine, like, do you have a process?
No, I just treat it like a job. I get up, I go to the gym in the morning, and I usually try to go to get a studio usually between 9:30 and 10 a.m. And then I go to about lunchtime, go walk my dog, who's my studio buddy. And then after that, I come back to the studio. I usually try to get back in the studio, give or take between 1 and 2 o'clock. I usually work till about 5. And then I start dinner for you. So when you get home, you can eat.
And I appreciate that.
Of course.
But I think
I'm working from home. It is what it is.
I think a lot of people don't give the creative profession enough credit because I think that there's an aspect to it that people take for granted. Like they think that, oh, you can just create whenever you want. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. And you've got an open schedule. You don't have a boss and all of that. But all of those things are actually.
Those could be detriments, though, actually. If you think about that for a second, those could be detriments. So if somebody is not self-motivated and they're not self-driven to actually produce and actually learn and get better over time, I think a lot of that comes down to self-motivation. So if you're working for yourself as an artist, being an artist, that's the first thing you really have to think about. Like,
Yeah.
are you willing to be by yourself for hours and hours and hours on end? Which truthfully for me has been quite difficult, particularly as I've gotten more successful. I've had to dedicate more and more time in the studio, and I've had less and less time to socialize with some of my friends that live locally. And it's been hard for me emotionally.
Well, you're a
because
very social
I'm a
person.
very sociable person. So it's very difficult for me to be in that solitary confinement, so to speak. It's still a lot of fun. But I feel like I tend to be very all in when I have a project in mind. And I'll go very, very strong. And I tend to deplete myself. And I think a lot of creatives this way because you have to believe in it yourself before anybody else will believe in it. So you really have to motivate yourself and really dig in there. And sometimes it's not a pretty process. Sometimes you really have to dig into some deep areas of yourself that maybe you're unaware of or that the project or your ideas bring to light. And they're not always pretty. So,
Do you feel like that comes out in your work?
100%.
Your emotions come out in your work?
If you want to know if I'm crazy, look at massiveburn.com.
Check it out.
Check it out. So, but no, but it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you said, you kind of deplete yourself in that. How do you build yourself back up or recharge yourself after that?
As I age, it's been changing the process a little bit. I was an athlete growing up, so I've always enjoyed physical activity. I go to the gym. I used to box a little bit. I played rugby for a while when I was in my early 20s in college. But as I've gotten older, of course, my sports injuries and the ability to really push myself in the gym to diminish some of that stress has gone away. The artwork used to be an element of that. But now the artwork has kind of switched over to business mode for the last like 10 years, 15 years or so. So it's a different way to think about your business. So the stuff that I used to use is changing. I've been trying to sleep more.
That always helps.
right. And then Marissa's been great at doing yoga and stuff, and she goes for walks in the morning sometimes. So I'll try to join her on occasion. If I can't make the gym, I've been doing more stretches. I've been trying to be more mindful, so I'm not as reckless with my health as I was in my youth, which is bittersweet because I had a good time.
It's not as much fun.
Yeah.
I had a good time. So, but count your blessings. I had a good run. You got to age gracefully. So, but yeah, does that answer your question? Oh.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about art and your creative process and kind of what drives you, do you think of it as a selfish role? Is creativity selfish and self-absorbed? Getting deep now.
I know.
In its purest form, no, but yes. That's a kind of a loaded question. Truthfully, yes. I think there have been moments where I've had moments of egotistical issues because I feel that to do what I have to do, I have to be alone. And in your solitary scenario, sometimes you get kind of lost in your own ego, and you do get attached to some of your work, so it becomes much more personal for you. And as you grow as a professional, you start to learn it's like people don't have to care about your work. It's important to you because you did it, but they don't have to like it, and that's okay. But there is aspects to it that are very ego driven because you want to be successful. And it's like like I said before, trying to be a rock star or an actor or a script writer or something. It's a very, very slim margin of great success. Can you make a living doing it? Yes, but it's a slog. Unless you have ability to print stuff and able to do things. And I'm very fortunate to have somebody like you guys in my life, and you in particular as my wife, with your ability to do stuff digitally, because I can't do that. So I've been very blessed in that realm, but there are times where I become very demanding and it's very egotistical. It's just what it is. I like to think that I'm inspiring other people.
Right.
And I do believe that to be art in its purest form, without any preconceived notions of consumerism or anything, I think that it's important to believe in yourself, but don't let that take over as a creative. Be confident in your own creativity and your own vision, but be willing to compromise as best you can, especially if you're not in charge. If it's a team effort, you have to compromise.
Yeah.
But if you're the one in charge, don't be so egotistical that you're not willing to entertain other ideas in different directions.
I would like to add to that I think that the end product, though, is the point that whatever was potentially selfish is then now selfless because you hand it off to the world to view and judge and make their own opinions on and be inspired by and all of those things.
True.
And I think that aspect gives you an opportunity to really connect with people from a human state, right?
True.
And
that's what I hope is happening.
Yeah.
I'm not there to witness that. So, I mean, I hope that's happening when I'm not around.
But what is that process like from your side to see people? So you put this work out there that's so personal and that you've put, I mean, clearly there was a thought process behind it or a message or something you're expressing. And I'm sure people have different perspectives on it. They don't always interpret it the same way or maybe the way that you anticipated. Like, is that hard or is it interesting to see what other people take out of it or?
That's always fun for me, actually. And it's funny, a lot of people, when you're younger and you first start out, a lot of artists want to pontificate a lot about what they think they know and about what their art means. And they're very open to do that. But as I've grown as an artist, I've learned I love hearing what other people take from my work because it's like music, It's just a different sensory experience. But it's like music, in my opinion, where you get to experience the piece or the sculpture or whatever it may be, and then be like, oh wow, like, and then kind of interpret yourself. I love hearing those thoughts from people. Sometimes, of course, when I have shows and openings, like, well, what does this mean? And I usually preface that conversation with like, well, when I was working on it, this is what it meant to me. And a lot of my work when I start, just to keep it succinct, I start with a basic idea, maybe, but not always. And as the process grows, it's very organic. Sometimes the meaning changes for me midway through a painting. I'll get bored with the painting and I'll try something drastic. Like I'm going to throw a bright red right here. I don't know what that is about, but we're going to mix it up and see where it goes. Right. So then I go for that. And then I just kind of follow the journey down. And the pieces sometimes will begin to speak back and forth to me. And they almost like a weird existential conversation for like, I know it sounds weird, but it's like you look at a piece like, well, this is orange and blue. Well, I need to balance that out. The technical skills start kicking in. That conversation begins to take form on a technical level. I've seen it done with music too. It's very much they try things out and the layering of music, and you layer all that up, and you're like, that's not quite hitting right. Like, how do we adjust this to make it work? And so it's very much that's how I paint a lot of my pieces, anyway.
Well, and that's similar for me as a graphic designer. Like, I'll start with a potential idea in mind, and I'll start with something that I think is going in the right direction, and then you slog through it. You go through it and through it and through it, and you're like, this just isn't hitting right. And then you try something drastic, or you experiment a little bit, or you go off the beaten path.
It gets you out of your head.
Yeah. And then something hits and you're like, wait, there's something here. What can I do with this? How can this change? Like, where is this leading? Where is this taking me? And it ends up turning in, sometimes you just feel it. Like, I'm sure you feel it when it hits and you're like, this is it. Yep. This is the moment that this painting or creation or whatever took form and took place.
Right.
And let me follow that path. This is the way I'm supposed to be going.
Right. And it's not you really making that decision. Sometimes it's the piece kind of telling you where to go. It's like, oh, wow, I need to go this direction. Sometimes I don't even like it. A piece of time, like, I know this needs to happen, and I do it. And I've told you this before in the studio. When you come to the studio, I'm like, It's like, oh, I love this. I'm like, well, that's you then. Yeah. So it's like, I'm my own worst critic too. Going back to the ego trip, I think I'm my own worst critic, and I definitely have bouts of serious self-doubt and having to mentally guard yourself to not spiral into a point of despair or a point of insecurity to where you can't function. Because then you're a victim of fear, and you're a victim of whatever you want to call it, whatever your emotion may be. But at some point, you just got to be the professional. And I always say to have the warrior mindset or the champion mindset. It's like, do it, just do it. Like, you stop thinking about it, stop being scared, just get up and do it. And the sooner you do it, the sooner you're going to learn, and the sooner you go to the next project, and you learn more and you learn more. So it's like, I try to avoid those pitfalls, but they're there.
Do you feel like being a creative allows you to tap into more of that emotional side of yourself than probably a lot of other people?
I'm learning as I get older that I'm an extremely empathetic soul. And I don't know if that's me having to address the human experience so much as an artist. That's a...
I like putting you in the hot seat.
Yeah. Throw it at me again. Let's try this again.
Do you feel like you've tapped into a more emotional side of yourself because you're a creative person? Like, do you feel like most creative people are more emotionally bound than.
Oh, they're going to say balanced. I was going to be like, no. Emotionally bound. I think I have seen a lot of artists that, but that's my circle too, though. So I mean, it's not like I can't speak to other industries.
Yeah, of course.
But I feel like creative industries tend to be much more empathetic, i.e., Hollywood, actors, singers, artists. And I think in order to make your work valuable, it has to be genuinely you, going back to your individual viewpoint. But I think you need to make it vague enough where it can actually transcend other people's lives. And you have to be emotionally in touch to do that. My challenge typically was trying to find a happier route, because when I was raised in the divorced family, I was into rock music and metal music. We're all in the early 90s. I was jamming out the gangster rap and the hardcore metal and all this kind of stuff, right? And when you're young, it's great because at least for me, I was full of testosterone, you know, and I just thought I had the world, I'm not going to say that word on there. I had the world in my hands.
Right, the palm of my hand.
I had it cupped in my hands to do what I want with it. And then as I've gotten older, you realize again that, you know, people don't have to care about what you're doing, and you really have to make your own way in the world. And it's not their responsibility to justify your life. It's your responsibility. And I wish I had learned that a little bit earlier. I really felt that I think a lot of young artists do this. They come out of school and they think they've learned so much, and they get out and some are very fortunate because of who they know or what have you. But generally speaking, artists get out and they're very idealistic, and they think the world's going to discover them and they're going to be the next
Big dreams.
Picasso or Salvador Dali or whatever. And that's just not the case. Reality. And that's the same with musicians, these young rock stars. That's why you start when you're young. When you're 15, 16, you're idealistic, you're full of energy, you don't mind living in a van, you're eating Doritos for dinner. I lived on ramen for years before I met you. You know this. I was so happy to upgrade to chicken. I started selling pieces for a few $100, you know? Like when you met me, I was selling
When
stuff.
you know you've made it.
Yes, right. Chicken. Woo! The bar is set so high.
Yeah.
No, but but yeah, you have to be empathetic. And I've learned recently that that can go the other direction, and you can find yourself in a very depressive state if you're not careful, because you want to help and you want to relate and you want people to relate to your work, and you hope you're inspiring people to be better, to understand themselves better is the idea anyway. And sometimes you have to expose yourself in a vulnerable state in order to relate to that. So,
well, and I think you, specifically speaking to you and your work, you paint a lot about the human experience.
True.
And the human condition. Talk a little bit about like your art and what you intend to do with that theming and concepts.
Sure. Well, my concepts are varied, so it kind of depends on the piece. I mean, ultimately, for me, I want people to look at my work and kind of see a piece of themselves that maybe they didn't recognize before, and they could hopefully start a conversation if there was somebody, even with themselves internally or with somebody they're there with viewing it, and they can have a conversation about whatever the piece may bring out in them. Again, the subject matter varies widely, but my human figures tend to be a little bit on the darker side. I was raised Catholic, so I do have a lot of that Western iconography in my work. I can't say that I'm very religious. I'm a spiritual person, but I can't say I'm very religious anymore. I was raised that way. So my work tends to go that direction. But for me, a lot of it's been seeking for myself, like my own spiritual path. And I've always felt if I did that genuinely and honestly with myself, the good, the bad, the ugly, hopefully people will connect with that. It's the same with music when people talk about heartbreak, or it's not always the prettiest stuff to talk about. Some of the stuff you bring up, you know, is valid. And hopefully it helps people just recognize that they're not alone and that you have these same struggles as other people.
Yeah.
Does that help? And it brings some smiles on the happy stuff with the flowers.
Flowers. Yeah.
Yes, you do pretty flowers.
You do pretty flowers.
And that's a nice change of pace, actually. That's actually why I got into picture books.
Yeah. Talk about your picture books.
Sure. The picture books have been a great distraction. I say distraction. A great new journey for me. It's been a slog as well, as you know. Started back in 2012, I think, designing Butterpup and these characters. And they've taken on different iterations throughout the last 10 years.
And for the audience, Butterpup
Sure.
Butterpup and Friends is a children's book series that we created.
Correct.
And it's about a little puppy dog with butterfly wings.
Correct.
That my 5-year-old adores. Adores.
So happy to hear that.
And her or Butterpup's best friend is a little girl named Allie who
my baby sister
discovers Butterpup in her grandma's backyard.
Right.
And it, all of the adventures that ensue from their friendship and friendship with the rest of the slew of really cute backyard buddy characters.
Yeah, I guess to sum it up really with the picture book series is that one is just you have a goal in mind, and it's a different standard, professional standard than fine art. When I got frustrated with the fine art world, and I've had some successes, and I've tried to get better as I get older, count my blessings. But sometimes you need these distractions when you're so focused on something and you're getting frustrated or you're getting stuck in your groove and you're not getting the results you need. It's up to you to change, and it's up to you to adjust to make it better. I needed a different path than just painting because the painting became a business and it became something that I wasn't enjoying as much as I used to. And I felt like I was scraping the barrel a little bit, especially during COVID, because during COVID, I just bought a whole bunch of canvases and I went nuts.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I was, well, I mean.
You took advantage of that opportunity though, whereas a lot of people let themselves succumb to the quiet and the solitude. You really did kind of take that opportunity by the reins and ran with it. And the work that you've created during that time, I think I
can't say I didn't fall into the silence.
Well,
I think
sure.
I've had a latent effect. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff after COVID got over. I think some of my paintings coming out now, I think are actually emotional resonances from me dealing with some of the stress that I internalized during that period, like everybody did. I was very fortunate that I had a home studio that I could work during that time. It was great. It was a blessing. I was grateful for that. Even though the rest of the world seemed to be suffering, I was like, well, I'm just living my whole now. Now I don't have to go out and see people. Like I don't have excuses. I'm
that
stuck
pressure
here
to go out and socialize has been relieved.
It's been relieved. So
Yeah.
now I'm like, well, now I'm stuck here anyway, so I might as well make it worth my time. And if I end up, I mean, you know what's going to happen. Everybody's scared. If I end up croaking, then good. I got more work done. But yeah, where was it? Picture books. Yeah, picture books. So, during that time, everybody was kind of having dark thoughts and just kind of working through their own issues as far as, and that's when you're forced to do that kind of stuff. I think everybody's kind of forced to look at themselves in the mirror and be like, how mentally tough are you? Like, are you going to be okay? Like, what are you going to do if something goes sideways? And a lot of people don't do that. I do that pretty regularly, but I think a lot of people, especially when you have kids and jobs and careers, like you get distracted. It's nobody's fault. But when that kind of stuff happens in society, I think a lot of society is unused to engaging themselves on such a deep existential level.
Really looking in the mirror and all.
I think it's difficult for a lot of people. It's difficult for me, but I'm lucky that I have tools that I can use. The kids' books being one of them, that I was able to divert some of my creative energy. I've always loved comic books and cartoon strips. I'm a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan. One of my most treasured possessions is the one you gave for Christmas, the big Calvin and Hobbes collection, all of them and the binders and all that stuff like that. Oh, it's a beautiful, beautiful set. That's one of my earliest inspirations as an artist was Calvin and Hobbes. I loved Wolverine growing up. I loved comic books, all that kind of stuff. So I always had an affinity for illustrative storytelling, sequential art, as it's technically called in colleges and whatnot. That encompasses anything with storytelling and imagery. So, and in doing that, I've always had an interest in it. And I've always tried it when I was a kid. And I was 13, 14, I was already creating characters and writing one sheets about how they did it. Marvel had these cards come out, like baseball cards. And I collected those too. But the Marvel had cards. My brother loved them, man, the holograms and all this stuff, right? And on the back, they had these the Incredible Hulk, for example. Everybody knows him now. You flip it over and it's like, strength.
Fun facts. Yeah.
It had all these almost like batting averages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So when you're 12 years old, you're like, cool, man. So I was making all my own characters and put my own stats together and put them in files. I still have them in the studio. I don't know if you've ever seen them. But I've always had an interest in it. So when I had the opportunity, you and I discussed this character one time, and you were like, oh, we got to get into licensing. It was the initial push. And that was all business oriented, just to make money, another stream of income. And as I started doing it, you and I realized this thing actually had legs. We're like, this thing actually has a lot more to it than just this little character on greeting cards. Let's do something with this. And that was a lot of fun. It was a challenge at first to get ourselves up to industry standards, page counts, how to do page turns, how to design a character to move page to page to page with different expressions and different angles. It's more challenging than people give it credit for. You're untrained in it. So that takes me a while to kind of learn that. But it's been a great, great fun for me to do that. I've been paid by a couple of other clients to do their picture books. They have a picture book, and I kind of coach them a little bit to make sure the picture book is up to standard.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun for me and a different kind of creative outlet.
And now you teach classes on
I teach classes on
cartooning. And
cartooning, and I also we have 4 new books coming out that I'm thrilled with. It has been an uphill battle getting these things finally done, but they're done.
Always.
You know, and I'm an overachiever, so instead of doing 1 book, I did 4, because
why not?
I don't know, because I drink. I don't know, but yeah, but I also feel like as a creative, I have that anxiety, that really deep anxiety. So the more I diversify and the more effort I put into, but then at some point you get to a point where you start diminishing your health, and that goes back to ego. It's like, I'm going to work so hard. You hear Will Smith and all these other people talk about their careers, and they're like, I'm going to outwork anybody. There's something to that. I mean, work beats out talent every time. If you work harder than the person with talent, you can sit there and rest on your laurels, and you're never going to get anywhere, no matter how talented you are. I think it comes down to the work. It just does. And you can wait to be inspired. It might take you 6 months. Like, there's times I go sit in my studio, I just look at the wall. I was looking at the paintings and I'm like, what am I going to do next? I guess I'll work on this one, because I do paint multiple paintings at once. I didn't mention that earlier. I paint anywhere from 5 to, I maxed out at about 15.
Mm-hmm.
I got to 15 one time in my studio, and
The walls start closing in on you.
I started losing my mind. I was like, all right, I'm never doing 15 paintings at once again. That's not going to happen. So,
You just move between them?
I do. Yeah. I call it shifts. I do shifts. Yeah. So I'll go in there. I divide my day pretty much into 2 sessions before lunch and 2 sessions after lunch. So the first session in the morning is wake up, coffee, workout, get home, walk my dog. Try to get that done around 10, if I can, at the latest. And then from 10 to noon is when I focus on one project, whether it be editing picture books, working on character designs,
Submissions.
plans, submissions, whatever it may be. Oops. And then as my brain gets tired over the day, I tend to go more creative. So then after lunch, we'll do sketches or submission ideas, things like this. And then usually, sometimes I'll combine it. If I'm just inspired to do a painting or something, after lunch, I'll paint nonstop from like 1 to 5 or 6 or whatever. Sometimes after dinner, we'll have dinner, I'll go back over to paint some more, depending. But I try to divide my day up into work blocks.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps me keep sane. So,
Um,
like I'm making progress, right? Like I'm organized.
Right.
Like I'm, as a creative person, you get
There's a
nuts
plan.
sometimes. You're like, I'm
Somewhere.
responsible for
Underlying plan.
Yes, in my own mind anyway.
Yeah.
In my own mind.
for you, what is the best part of the creative process?
The beginning.
When you first start?
When I first start and I'm inspired. Yeah. Because any professional knows that sometimes you have the best idea in the world, and as you begin, you're like, oh crap, this is going to be like a mountain. Sometimes a project becomes a mountain range of obstacles, and you're just like, oh, this is going to be 3 years.
But you're already so far in, like there's no stopping.
Well, sometimes your heart's just in it. You
Yeah.
know, it's like a mini love affair or a fling or something. It's like your heart's so into it. It's like, I told you before, I have ideas for days when it comes to animation, for movies, for movie scripts. And I know deep down I'm never going to get to 90% of that stuff. But that doesn't mean it doesn't live in my mind. Like, I can see it finished. I can see it alive. I can see it in the world. And that becomes a hard thing to deal with sometimes, especially when you know you have multiple good ideas.
Yeah.
I'm very good at, I say, journaling, sketchbooks, and I'm very good at writing down ideas when I'm working on something else and something else pops in my head. Because that's how it happens. You'll be working on a painting and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I should do that.
But not on this one.
Then go take notes. And
It doesn't go here.
Yeah, it doesn't go here. So and that takes practice too, because I've made the mistake of done it before. It's like, oh, that's cool. Let me try it here. And then I ruin the whole piece. Like, oh, what did I do? So then you got to go back and reassess. And sometimes those pieces become the best pieces. I call them breakthrough pieces. You took a chance and it went sideways on you. You don't give up on it. You just kind of, it's like a puzzle. You just kind of, all right, well, where's this taking me? And so then at that point, you just kind of give it up to the universe, so to speak, and use your skills as best you can. Almost like a flashlight in the dark. Just kind of, hey, where am I going? And then eventually you say, and then it opens up, you're like, there I am. Okay.
Yeah, you
Not
talk
at all what you expected.
you talk a lot about like the reactive process in how you create, because I'm being a more digital artist. I have a lot of tools in my tool belt that I can use to like erase mistakes
Right.
or change something later.
Sure.
Do you feel like, being an analog artist, for lack of a better term, do you feel like you get
Made me feel so old.
do you feel like you get you have to react a lot instead of being able to make up for mistakes? Like, how do you change that? You've talked about reacting to something that you did, because you can't like erase it because the paint's already on the canvas.
Right. That's true. As you put it, I'm an analog artist. we can talk about AI in a minute. I've been
Yeah.
studying a lot of AI recently. As an analog artist, as a painter specifically, I don't have a ton of sculpture experience or a ton of other practices, so to speak, creatively. I'm learning wood sculpture. Again, I did some of it in college and stuff like that. But as far as reacting, I think that's part of the creative process. I think a lot of it is trial and error. I think as you become a more experienced artist, particularly in a particular discipline like painting, such as I am, I think you start to learn to, you start to be comfortable with the process more. And so you're more willing to accept, for lack of a better word, existential nudges in different directions, however you want to phrase that. Like I said, the piece will start talking to you at some point. And I think as you become more experienced as an artist, those technical skills are tools in which you communicate with that particular creative process. And that's, to me, is part of the excitement. I think I'd be very bored that's why I don't do portraits. I did portraits in college for a while. I did family portraits and portraits of, cowboys and, kids and, sunset for somebody, I think. And it was all fun, but it was all very technical and very boring. It was just boring. Is there a creative aspect to that? I'm not diminishing portrait artists or anything like that, but there is a creative aspect. But it's not the wild and crazy creativity that I enjoy.
Were unexpected.
Yeah.
It's a very technical creativity that's valid in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's a skill set worth having, but it's just like I equate it with music a lot. Like people can learn classical music and learn how to play whatever instrument on a great symphonic level. But if they can't write their own music and they want to be a rock star, that's never going to happen. You have to learn how to create your own creativity, whether it be music or art or whatever. That being said, the more unique it is, that's usually how you're going to stand out, particularly this day and age with the digital age. It's more about branding. Realism has been discovered. You can paint realism. There's a million realism artists out there. Well, what's the point? That's like a million technical clarinet players. Well, okay, well, go join a symphony, but you're never going to be a rock star. You're never going to be somebody that stands out from the crowd in that arena unless you write your own music. If you're doing that, or write your own paintings or own stories or whatever, you got to make it genuine and unique.
So for you, it's important to be one of a kind.
And all of that comes in with your own personal reactions.
Yeah.
Like when a creative project starts to go sideways on you, it's how you react to it, and your own personality and your own skill sets start to play into that. And it plays into that uniqueness. So when you're done, if you take your time and do it well, when you're done, you will have a very unique. I say that, but there's always overlap because inspiration comes from everywhere.
Yeah.
AI gets their stuff from its database. People are no different.
Yeah.
We learn stuff from TV and magazines and reading and experiences, and we know the cartoons we like. Like when I do cartoons now, there is a Calvin and Hobbes flair to it. Not exactly, but it's similar because it influenced.
Inspired by,
Exactly. There's a lot of Gustav Klimt that I mentioned earlier as one of my favorite painters. One of the older favorite painters that I have. I have a lot of modern favorite painters too. But that particular aesthetic is very appealing to me. His shapes and the swirls and the patterns and the gold. The gold was so cool,
Yeah.
And I've been using some of the gold leaf in my work in recent years. Not to the extent he did, but, playing with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, inspiration comes from all over.
But you bring a unique point of view to it.
I think it's very important, yes. If you copy one person, you're plagiarizing. If you copy 100 and you mix all that into one piece, you're not copying, you're being inspired by.
Right.
So there's a difference.
Love it. So you talked a little bit about sketchbooks, and I've seen your sketchbooks upon sketchbooks upon sketchbooks, full of ideas.
And I hope nobody else ever sees it.
How do you decide which piece you create?
Well, depends on what I have in front of me. I tend to buy my canvases pre-stretched. I'm kind of gearing up to get out of that, but it's just when I started my broke business, I was painting on watercolor paper, and then I upgraded to small canvas, and then I upgraded to gallery stretch canvas, and I've never really gotten away from that. I haven't had a need to. So it depends on what canvas I have in front of me. Only in the last few years have I been really focused on different particular aesthetic series that I work on, like the Totem series, for example. Y'all can see that. I don't know if that matters. Y'all can edit that if you need to. But the Totem series is one. I'm sorry, go ahead again. The Totem series is one of the series.
Yeah.
There's
You have the Totem series. I mean, you were talking about how you pick which sketches you create and that you recently started in working in series.
Sure. It just depends on the canvas in front of me.
Yeah.
So the bigger the canvas, this is wrong, really, on a real technical level. But the bigger the canvas, the better I have to do. And that's just not true. But I do have more of a pressure on myself when I have a larger canvas to make it worthwhile.
Well, and you paint really detailed too.
True.
So for you, probably the larger canvas allows you to get even more finer details into what you're working on.
And that can be maddening. It's time consuming. But yes, that's true. And it can seem endless for sure. I have a big canvas in our garage right now that I'm trying to get back to, but it's like every time I look at it, I get intimidated. I'm like, oh, so I know it's going to be just really a long time before I get it done, but it is daunting. But there's sometimes I have a library of sketchbooks, and when I get a bulk of canvases in, I will put them all out. I take all the wrappers off, I put them all out. And then I do it to my sketchbooks, and I tend to tear up a piece of sketch paper and I'll bookmark the pieces. And sometimes I'll combine sketches. I'll have an idea here, and I was like, the idea is too similar to another idea. Just throw a curveball in the system and grab this, and we'll get another sketch and mixing it together, and then I'll just see where it takes me. Sometimes it's a win, sometimes it's a big loss, but who knows? You don't know if you don't try. So, but the sketches are just kind of like ways to kind of keep my ideas there. My sketchbooks, I have writings in there. I do quotes from other artists. I write down quotes from myself, or just kind of, my spelling is horrible. That's one reason I don't want people to see it.
Your handwriting is horrible.
Well, good. They can't tell that I misspelled something. That's probably why it's messy in my sketchbook. I'm like, just trail off,
Masking it.
Yeah. And I used to be good at spelling. I don't know what happened as I got older. I don't know if it's autocorrect or what, But my sketchbook, it could be anything.
It's creative journaling, essentially, right?
Pretty much, yes. It could be anything from a beginning of a kid's book, a line to put in a book like this, something to put on a painting, a sketch, a hand study. It could be anything. So it just really depends.
So we touched on it a little bit, but briefly tell me your thoughts on AI.
Briefly tell you my thoughts on AI.
How has it affected your work? How does it affect your creative career? Because, again, you're a traditional artist.
Answer, and now he's
I know. Now I'm making it deeper.
It's simple. It's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question, and I know you have a lot of opinions. But, being a painter, how does does it affect your career?
Yes.
How has it affected your career? Where do you see it going? It's not a brief question. I'm sorry.
It affected my career, or it's affecting my career as many creatives, not just painters, not just creatives, even office people. I mean, AI is disrupting everything.
Yeah.
I do think it's a little bit scary.
Uncharted territory.
Yeah, for creatives. I mean, it's. I hope this doesn't happen, but I do see it going this direction. I think it's diminishing the value of creativity in some ways. I think that a lot of younger people want stuff so fast, and so
that instant gratification.
Pretty much, yeah. And it's okay. The world's moving faster and faster, but at some point we're going to spin off the rails. That's my thought anyway. I do think that AI is a very important tool. I think that I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I say that a lot. Elon Musk is an example. I don't know. AI has a lot of benefits to it. It remains to be seen how it's going to change things. I've been in the habit of trying to study some of the tools, particularly in the fine arts and picture book arena, for publishers, because they're going faster and faster. I've noticed a trend where the illustrations are getting simpler and simpler. Which isn't a bad thing. Ezra Keats kind of lots of awards for his work, and it's very simple and it's very poignant, but it's very good storytelling. I'm not against that kind of work, but I'm seeing it become more and more the trend, or more and more AI. Pixar, everybody wants Pixar.
Yeah.
It's like there's no creativity there. It's becoming vanilla. It's becoming watered down.
Yeah.
It's becoming so easy. I think the individual branding, going back to that, an individual voice, whether it be flat illustrations, cutout illustrations like Eric Carle, things like this, is going to be changing. I was on some tools looking at picture books. I don't think AI is to that point yet. You still have to have some graphic design skills in order to get it to an industry standard. Like with editorial stuff with Illustrator and Photoshop, things of that nature. But it's definitely getting that direction. I'm keeping my finger on the pulse, and I am playing with the AI in that direction. I can't say I'm going to use AI a lot in my fine art. I have some ideas for some museum shows that I would like to see happen, where I use AI as a reactionary process to what I've already created.
Yeah.
I've thought about doing a book where I have my fine art, and I put that on AI, and I have it write a one-page short story about each painting to see what AI comes up with based on this imagery that I give them that I created. So that's interesting to me. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if that's really growing in any particular direction. It's just a way for me to interact with it and get to know it better.
Yeah.
I have my fears with it, but I think there's a huge benefit to it. I don't want it to go away, but I think it should be regulated in such that it helps people not lose their livings.
Yeah.
I don't know though, but it does help. It helps to flow. If it gets to the point where you can do picture books where it takes me 6 months if I'm pushing myself by hand illustrating and painting and designing and writing and editing and all that, that's very fast for a picture book, 6 months.
Yeah.
You're looking at about a year sometimes for one. A really good one, sometimes even longer, depending on the complexity of the design. When AI gets to where you can do consistent characters over consistent pages and the costumes are the same and the hair is the same and all that, when AI gets to that point where it can do that without having to edit, it's going to blow the lid off the publishing industry. It's going to blow the lid off. I think it already starting to.
Yeah.
I know Amazon and I know a lot of places, publishers are being very cautious about allowing AI to infiltrate their creative spheres. You can't avoid it. It's coming. There has to be a way to kind of understand where it's coming from. AI is not bad. I think a lot of younger people want it so fast. They're going to use AI and not edit. They're not going to look at it for accuracy or for what they want it to be. And they're just going to put it out. I've seen it online already.
Yeah.
With some picture books that you go through it. It'll be the same character in a yellow dress, but the yellow dress changes every page, or the hair changes a little bit every page, or they just put black text on top of a night sky and you can barely read it. It's like, these are not industry standards. These are people that are going through AI. They're rushing through it and they're just using Canva, smashing it together and uploading it, hoping to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
It's diminishing the quality of the field. I think it's diminishing the inspiration for young people. I think the inspiration for young people, for example, when the simple illustrations are coming along, I remember like the Berenstain Bears. I remember like all these other books when we were young growing up. I mean, who's the guy, Charles Finn something, did Polar Express. All these things, right? Like, these are beautiful illustrations that, man, they inspired me as a kid. I want that for kids that read my books.
Yeah.
I don't want to be so simple. And the excuse I've heard from the industry is like, oh, well, we got to make money. We got to get quick turnaround, put a lot of money in this. And I understand that's a business. But when you're diminishing the quality of the product to a point just to appease the business, I think we're missing the point of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to just get money out of parents' wallets. We're trying to teach our kids the joy of life and the different experiences and expose them to different thought processes. That goes a long way with artwork.
Yeah.
So I get discouraged when I see AI taking over in this arena.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a point at which the pendulum sort of swings back and that there's so much of that kind of work out there that people start to realize the humanity that's missing? Maybe?
I hope so. That'd be great for my business.
Yeah.
Keep my fingers crossed on that one. I like to think that's going to happen. I think that might be a little bit idealistic.
Yeah.
I think there might be a segment of society that goes back that direction.
Yeah.
I think it's happening in a lot of ways. I think like a lot of young kids are great. And in fact, they want to buy clothes that are not cheap. They want to buy clothes that are durable now.
Not fast
I've been
fashion.
playing with that for years.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do I buy shoes $150 now? They fall apart in 6 months.
Yeah.
Bleh. They use the last 7 years now.
Yeah.
Everything's getting cheaper, and just like the books, everything's getting faster and faster and faster and faster and cheaper,
that
and cheaper and cheaper.
Mass consumer.
Yes, and
process.
that's part of my ego. Sometimes I feel like I'm part of the problem. Am I part of the solution? I just keep putting products out there that are throwaway products, and I don't know.
Well, they're not throwaway
Well,
products.
they're not, but I hope that my products are not throwaway products, and I hope they don't end up in a landfill. I hope they're inspiring, and I hope people treasure what they get from me and they hold on to it. That's not my choice. Ideally, it's what I hope to happen, but that's out of my control. So all I can control really is my work effort, trying to build the best quality I can in whatever creative project that I'm doing, whether it be with a team where it becomes, a collaboration, which takes communication and time. It's just a matter of self standards.
Yeah. Value.
And self value. Like I don't want to put out anything that's I don't deem worthy of me. And I have a high bar, and it's hard as you get older not to compromise on that bar some, because life has other plans and you can't just live on your ideals. And it's hard to let those go sometimes, but time's coming. It's going to change. So you just got to do what you got to do. Adapt or die. Isn't that right?
Adapt or dive.
Sharing a thought.
Find lessons from Miles Davis.
Words of wisdom.
That seems like a really good closing point.
I know. It feels like that wraps it up,
Oh,
doesn't
there
it?
you go. Now on a dark note. Love you guys. Thanks for listening.
So unless you have anybody else, all right, cool. Tell us where we can find you, where we can follow you, what's coming up next.
I'm a ninja. You'll never find me. No, it's massiveburn.com is the fine arts site that we run. Of course, you can find us on social. On Instagram, it's at massiveburn. On Facebook, it's Massive Burn. My name's Miles Davis, like the jazz guy. My mom's main name is Miles, just for the record, so everybody knows. We didn't take the jazz guy's name; it just happened that way.
What is it like to have another famous creative as your name?
It was a blessing at first, and as I've gotten more and more adept and my career has grown, it's a double-edged sword because I don't want to change the name because it's my mom's main name. And it's a nice name. I like my name.
I like your name.
Got a
too.
nice ring.
You are a Miles.
Got a nice ring. There's my jazz. There's my scat for you. But I mean, I actually played music until I was in 3rd grade, and I realized who Miles Davis was, the jazz legend. So I stopped playing music. I put that down, and I really enjoyed music. I still do. I love music. I play it all the time. I love learning about it. I love musical theory. I love what it can do for the brain and the health versus just rocking out, all that. But yeah, he was also a painter. A lot of people don't know. He was a painter in the 60s. Now, his stuff is very much in the 60s, very abstract and kind of jazzy, for lack of a better term. You can definitely see the overlap in the two skills that he had there.
So you took the flip side of the coin, of the Miles Davis coin.
I did, yeah. I'm going to go all painting, right? I'm gonna be the white Miles Davis who paints. So, but yeah, and what's funny, the same birthday as Martin Luther King Jr. too, January 15th. Yeah, it's weird, right? Tell everybody I lost my tan, but I still got the soul. But yeah, so I mean, as far as the massiveburn.com is where you can find my fine art. It is nothing like the Miles Davis jazz guy's work. So if it's abstract and kind of like jazzy, that's probably him. If it's got a lot of figures in it, it's probably me. Let's see what else. And then my picture books, I'm so excited. We got 4 new picture books coming out here. Hopefully in, I think March is kind of our game. We were hoping April, but life has had other plans. So we're pushing for March. I do want
You mean April or May? This is
okay, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I'm sorry. April or May. See, told you I was tired. But yeah, so April or May. May's a little bit later than I expected, so we're hoping for April. But 4 new books. I'm really excited about those and having to market those. But yeah, so that's going to be, and I'm not really sure how we're going to market those just yet because I know we're busy trying to build a publishing arm on Amazon at the moment. So we'll see how that goes and how we line up the legalities for the publishing. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well, we were very excited to have you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
We appreciate learning about all of your creative endeavors and kind of your process and all of the internal stuff that happens in a creative brain.
Well, I will say this. If you're an aspiring artist or creative, learn the business. Learn the business as much as you can before you get started because this is not an easy living. That's all. It's a wonderful living. It's a magical living, but just get to work and learn the business.
Know what you're getting yourself into.
Exactly. And it'll change. You'll think you know it for 5 years, and all of a sudden they'll throw you for a curveball. Hello, AI. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. The world's not going to stop turning. That's it. Sorry.
Well, we appreciate you being on our podcast. And the first
you, Clementine.
episode of The Inspired, we appreciate being inspired by Miles Davis.
You're very welcome.
Before we close out, we do want to ask you to answer a set of rapid fire questions.
You up for some rapid fire questions, Miles?
Sure. Can I wet my palate here? Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Prepare yourself. Let's see what happens. Oh, boy.
I was trying to get the swallow one out.
That's a pro move. I like that.
I don't know if that resonated there. Go ahead. I was trying to get the swallow.
All right. You ready?
Sure, let's go.
Rapid fire.
All right.
Miles Davis. What was your favorite Mr. Sketch scented marker?
Oh, my God. Grape. No, I don't know. That's tough. They're teaching us to huff like in 1st grade, right?
Go with your first instinct.
Grape or watermelon, one of those.
Is there a place where you feel most inspired?
Ooh. I'd have to say my studio right now, but it changes. Like, I love going to Barnes & Noble. I'm going to be so sad when the bookstores go down. I love going to Barnes & Noble and just walking around, just touching the books. Not even reading, just touching them.
I love a Barnes and Noble.
I do too.
I totally
There's
get
something
that.
about it. And I get out of that. My studio becomes my workspace, right? So I can't always be in my workspace and get inspired. I got to get out of it sometimes.
Yeah.
Check something else out.
If you were a superhero or a villain, what would your superpower be?
Oh, jeez. That's tough. I mean, my first instinct is to be like Wolverine. I want a healing factor. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair.
I want to be able to heal over anything. That'd be awesome. You know?
That's a good one.
But I don't want to live to be 200 years old either. You know? People you love die and pass on. You're stuck by yourself. Ew, I don't want that either. Which is also part of his problem. Healing factor slows it down. See, I'm a comic nerd. That's how I know it. But the healing factor is great, you know?
Yeah, that
That'd
would
be
be
cool.
awesome.
Yeah. I don't want to read people's thoughts.
No.
I know mine are dark. I don't want to read anything. That's gotta be horrible.
What about your at-bat music? What's your walk-up song?
Oh, dude. So many. Just, I don't know. God, first band to come to mind is like Nothing More or Pantera or something like that. They're like, whoa, just get going, dude. But that's good.
Get you pumped.
I mean, I used to play sports. I mean, I got boxed and I wrestled and I did rugby and all that. So I always had that hardcore stuff going. I love Seven Dust. Seven Dust was a band that really helped me put me on the map, actually. I was really struggling to get my career off the ground. And Seven Dust is one of my favorite bands. And I still jam them out on a regular basis in my studio.
Well, you didn't say how they helped.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so back in MySpace days, if you guys remember those, long story short, I know it's rapid fire questions, right? I'm sorry.
Rapid fire.
So Seven Dust, anyway, long story short, they were just great guys. And one of the guys saw my MySpace page over a friend of mine who worked in a music studio and called me in. I was broke living in South Carolina on a vacation or something, not vacation, but up there working. And I was living on a couch, couldn't afford off. Like I was really beside myself. And I was about ready to give up artwork. And Seven Dust really kind of, you know, I just had a little breakdown. And the universe was like, here you go. And Seven Dust was in Atlanta recording their next album and contacted me out of the blue. And I gave up everything right there on the spot and drove back that night or that morning, I think, all the way back to Atlanta to discuss it with them. And it didn't get me out of debt at that point, but it definitely helped get me on the right path. And it exposed me to a lot of clientele that really enjoyed my work because a lot of my work is kind of darker and the metal covers and the metal audience really took to a lot of my work. So it was really cool.
Yeah, so you created their album art.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun.
All right, back to rapid fire.
Sorry.
Would you rather travel to the past or the future?
The past.
One item on your bucket list.
Travel back to Tuscany.
Like-
I want to go live I want to die in Tuscany. That'd be cool. Just roll me in there some wine.
If you could live in a TV show, what show would it be?
King of Queens. Hands down. King of Queens. I'd be one of his neighbors. I'd hang out with him and Deacon all day long. I'm going to go play pool, get some beers. We'll have a blast.
Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Would you
Or
rather live
savory,
the
I
rest...
think. Savory.
Savory.
Not just salty, but
That's fine.
savory.
Would you rather live the rest of your life in total sunlight or total darkness?
Sunlight, for sure.
And finally, can you impersonate any famous person? Or character?
I don't know. Schwarzenegger, maybe?
Let's
Yeah.
hear it.
My painting. Come look at my painting. I'm having a great show. Please. I work so hard. I work so hard on this. Please, come check it out. Let me know what you think.
That's pretty good.
No, is that good?
That's pretty good.
Take it, man.
We'll have to ask the listeners because they can't see you. So
Yeah, I didn't
maybe
get to
they
warm
hear-
up. Well, I don't look like him.
I know. That's my point. When you're looking at you, it's different.
I guess they will be looking at me. I don't know.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much
You're right.
for being with us today, Miles. And thanks everybody for joining us as we were inspired by Miles Davis. We look forward to sharing another episode with you soon. So please remember to click that subscribe button. If you want to see more from our team here at Clementine Creative, you can follow us on Instagram at Clementine Creative Agency. And until then, we hope that you feel inspired and live creative. Thanks.
Bye.